Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, welcome. This is LS Vintage Designs and I'm Lisa. How's everybody doing? I hope you're having an amazing day. I thought today we need to talk about something that's very important and very prevalent in vintage antique items, and that's odor. How many of you ever walk into a vintage antique mall or maybe just a booth and you get hit by, I like to call it the smell of grandma's attic, okay? It's kind of that old smell, kind of takes you back maybe to mothballs or maybe just old. I don't know how to describe it, but if you do anything in vintage, you know what I'm talking about. So you have that smell. Sometimes you have cigarette smoke. Remember, 50s, 60s, 70s, people were big smokers. In fact, they were big smokers probably up until the early 2000s. So a lot of vintage furnitures we find, a lot of vintage clothes, those sort of things have soaked in cigarette smoke. You can also have food smells. If somebody was a cook and they loved to cook, but cooking night after night, the strong smells of herbs and, just food soaked in too. Now, what kind of items soaked up these smells? Well, porous items. And what do those items constitute? Of course, clothes, fabrics, like upholstered furniture. But believe it or not, wood is porous. You think wood is hard, but it's not. Wood is porous. And wood can soak up those smells, and it's hard to get it out of wood. I went to an estate sale one time, right when I was starting out. And I purchased some things. The house was artist from the 60s. Very cool house, very cool stuff. But they were both smokers, and the house was reeking. And if you smoke, that's fine. I'm not here to judge, but I am a non-smoker. And the smell was strong. It was in your face. I mean, the walls were nicotine stained. Everything was nicotine stained. And I made the mistake of buying a really cool vintage wood clock. And I thought, it doesn't smell, it's just the house. Well, when I got everything out to my car and I got home, I opened my trunk and oh my God, my trunk smelled like cigarette smoke. That's how soaked in it was on everything. Now, the only other pieces I bought were some of those 60s tall cats, and those are porcelain. So I washed those and let them outside for a day or two, and they were fine because porcelain it was glazed, it was sealed, so it was not porous. Porcelain can be, any type of ceramic stone can be porous if it's not sealed, but these were sealed, thank goodness, even after all these years. And the smell after washing them in Dawn and leaving them outside for a day or two, they did stop smelling like cigarette smoke. This clock though, it first of all, it was just coated in nicotine on its surface. But the smell had soaked all the way into the clock. All the way in. And I tried every trick, tip, method I knew to get the smell out. I even went to my grandmother and said, hey, how do I get this smell out? To no avail. And unfortunately, there are smells that they're so ingrained in there. I mean, especially think about it this way. If they had lived in that house 30 years and that clock was a wedding present and had been in there 30 years, it had 30 years of cigarette smoke soaked into it. And again, wood is porous. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't realize that hard things can soak up smells. And again, your granites, your stones, porcelains, those kind of things, ceramics, if they're not sealed, they can soak up smells as well. So those are items that soak up smells that people don't realize. So when you go into these booths in these antique malls or into estate sales and you get hit with smells, be leery. Now, I have a rule now. If I go into a house and the walls are coated, I kid you not, you took something off the wall in this house. The shape was there because of the nicotine. If I go into a house that smells of nicotine, I just leave. One, it gives me a migraine now because I have a brain tumor, but I just leave. But there are smells. Sometimes you go into a home and you smell dog pee and cat pee, and I kind of have a rule about this too. I don't buy anything that was peed on, because even if you wash it, a lot of times dog pee comes out, cat pee doesn't come out of anything. And if I go into a house, if I'm shopping for a house and I go into a house and the wood floors have been peed on, even if there's carpet and it's been cat pee and it's been there a long time and it's soaked through to the concrete, be very leery because the smell may not come out. There are just some smells that you basically have to break down the house to get out. I mean, I'm sure the people that bought that house with the smoke, the walls just stained, had to take all the sheetrock down. So what can you do? So when you go into estate sales, evaluate your smells. Do you think you can get it out? Is it a piece that, even though you're not sure, you're willing to take the chance? And that's what I do. And every find is, how high on my treasure scale is it? And do I just have to have it? And do I think I can get the smell out? So today, we're talking odors, which I forgot to say at the beginning. So I'll put in a little blurb at the beginning. That's fine. But let's talk about some things to get these odors out. And these are going to be odors all the way. I have specific ones for cigarette smoke, but I have general ones as well. But all of these you can try on any smell, whether it's grandma's attic, cigarette, food, whatever. Okay, so we talked about the porous items, woods, unsealed, stone, ceramics, clothes, of course, fabrics, curtains, furniture, that sort of thing. And when you think about furniture, it's not just the fabric. Oops, gotta change my battery. Okay, sorry, my battery died. So when you're thinking about furniture, it's not just the upholstery on the top. You have to think about the stuffing, the cushions. It's gonna soak all the way down in, depending on how long it's been exposed to the odor. So let's talk about some ways to get smells out of certain things and certain smells, some specialized tips and tricks. Okay. So for wood, my wood clock, I'm going to tell you everything I did and nothing worked. Like I said, it was 30 years of cigarette smoke. But these are all really good options, and they may work on a wood piece you find if it's not so, just soaked in it. So soap and water, you can wash wood. The thing when you wash wood is don't drench it in a sink. Use, a damp rag with soap, wipe it on real good, and then rinse it off and dry it immediately. We don't want any warping, that sort of thing. Again, soap and water, vinegar and water. Vinegar is wonderful. A lot of people mop their floors with vinegar. 3% hydrogen peroxide in water can get smells out. A sponge or bowl with vinegar. Sit inside, like say it's a dresser. You can set that inside a drawer, or multiple drawers with multiple bowls of vinegar. You can set it on the top. You can also use coffee grounds and activated charcoal. Again, those are all items that you sit in a bowl or on a sponge inside the piece or on top of the piece and let the smells it pulls the smells out and into it. And a lot of times that'll work if you buy an old dresser and it has grandma's attic smell. That will help, but you have to put whatever you're using. It can be, and it's fresh coffee grounds, not used. We want them fresh, not used. You can put those in each drawer, close the drawer, and then put one on the top. You can do this inside or outside. If you have a nice covered space or a garage, keeping it outside, and that's just a little bit more fresh air moving around it, that's up to you. Also depends on, outside humidity levels, where you live, if that's a good option or not. Now, for cigarette smoke, You can mix half a cup of vinegar with 2 cups of water in a spray bottle and spray the piece lightly down and let it dry. But you don't want to puddle. If water puddles, then you go back and dry it off because you don't want anything to warp or, pop up on the edges. If that doesn't help, repeat as many times as necessary. You can also use baking soda. And baking soda is nice because it is a dry powder. So you can sprinkle it in the drawers, you can sprinkle it on top and just let it sit there. And again, it's like the coffee grounds, it's like the sponge with the vinegar. It absorbs odor into it. That's why some people put the box of baking soda into the refrigerators to absorb the smell. Same theory goes with this. If you put it, especially if you're going to use baking soda in a dresser or anything in a dresser, make sure you put it in each drawer, close the drawers. That'll make sure all that scent's concentrated and maybe it's being soaked up by whatever you're using to get rid of it. Again, you can use the coffee grounds if you want to. Same thing as the baking soda. You're going to use fresh, clean, never used coffee grounds. You could sprinkle them around and then vacuum them out. It's up to you. Sit outside. Sit it outside. Now here's an interesting one. Newspaper is also known to have a property where it soaks up smells. So if you have, grandma's attic dresser, or maybe it smells like cigarette smoke, line the drawers with newspaper and then put a layer on top. Don't get it wet though, because then you're going to have ink issues from the newspaper going onto your furniture. But that's supposed to help soak up those odors as well. Now, if it has a mildew odor, like if you know it's been wet and maybe it has that musty smell to it, you can try lacquering it if it's wood furniture. That's a lot more work, so you would want to definitely do more in-depth research about that and try all of these easier methods beforehand. And there's no guarantee that when you go through the trouble of re-lacquering it or activating the lacquer with fresh lacquer, that the smell's going to go away. Okay, so we just covered, basically everything. A few more that wasn't actually covered is mothballs. If you want to use mothballs, personally, I don't like mothballs, but, you're always free to use mothballs. There's something called Stink Slayer. And this is good it's for skunk smells, vomit, and urine, okay? So this is good, like I said, if you're in a home and maybe you buy a piece of furniture and you get home and you start smelling something and you realize that the animal in the home, whether a cat or dog, peed on it. You could try this, and it's called Stink Slayer. Coffee grounds, activated charcoal, borax. My grandmother used to make roach preventative with borax. She'd make up her own like little roach balls and put them under her cabinets and stuff. She lived out in the country. So borax in a dish. Everything's in a dish unless you want to sprinkle the baking soda all over or the fresh coffee grounds. Dryer sheets. I've used dryer sheets traveling. When we're traveling and we have a lot of dirty clothes, we're not going to be home like in a day or two, and it's summer, your dirty clothes are piling up, and you start to notice, especially if they're sitting in a hot car, you're not bringing them into a hotel overnight, you start noticing kind of a smell. There's some dryer sheets. Layer, a day, a dryer sheet, couple of days dryer sheet. That will cut down on your traveling smells, and I guarantee you it might help with your grandma's attic smells or cigarette smoke. There's Spiridon, which is again, it's a bacteria spray. Vanilla extract in a bowl. Slice of onion on a paper plate. Kitty litter. Cedar chips or cedar planks. Those are the old way of putting those in the drawer. They would go into the trunks. When the girls used to have the trunks and they put all the goodies for when they got married in there. The trunks were cedar, which kept them fresh. Well, this is the same idea. You can use cedar chips or you can get cedar planks and put these in furniture that stinks or on top, and hopefully they'll soak up that smell. Newspaper and fresh air. So those are all the ways that I use to get rid of smells if I buy something that has an odor that's unpleasant. I will say I try to avoid purchasing anything at estate sales, garage sales, antique malls, thrift stores, all of that has odor. Because it can be difficult to get rid of. You never know. I definitely don't buy cigarette smoke anymore. And that's just because I learned my lesson. I love that clock. I tried everything. To get the cigarette smell out of that clock, and I couldn't do it. I mean, I tried all of these, plus even some crazy ones, and nothing worked. I even tried taking all the mechanicals off the clock, the face, everything, taking the wood, soaking it in Dawn dish soap for 5 minutes, bringing it out, drying it real good outside. Didn't help. So, not all smells can be eradicated, but if it's not a smell that's particularly pungent or hasn't been set in for 30 years, these are great tips and tricks, and you can try them on smells that have been, baked in for 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years. Your results are just going to be kind of, 50-50. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video about odors and what you can do about them. If you did, please be sure and give this video a thumbs up. Also, I have some great Father's Day gift ideas in my Etsy shop. And I'm going to do one more little video again about Father's Day here in a couple of days. Thank you for being here today, guys. If you hadn't yet, hit that subscribe button with that little bell. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.